The moment I saw Karren McKenzie backing her silver Lexus up to my woodpile at 3 in the afternoon, during the worst blizzard Montana had seen in 15 years, I knew my life was about to get complicated. I'm Keith Yardley, and I'd lived in Whitefish, Montana for exactly 18 months when this nightmare began. The year was 2025, and I'd moved here from Seattle looking for peace, quiet, and a simpler life after my divorce. What I got instead was the Pine Ridge HOA and its tyrannical president, Karren McKenzie. A 52-year-old bottle blonde with too much time on her hands, and an obsession with every single rule in our homeowner association's 67-page handbook. The blizzard had started 2 days earlier, on a Tuesday morning in late January. The Weather Service had predicted it would be bad, possibly historic. They weren't wrong. By Wednesday afternoon, we had 32 inches of snow with another 2 feet expected overnight. The temperature had dropped to negative 12 degrees, and the wind chill made it feel like negative 40. Power lines were down across half the county. My house had lost electricity at 6 that morning. That's why the firewood was so critical. I'd spent the entire previous autumn splitting and stacking 2 full cords of seasoned lodgepole pine and Douglas fir. Every weekend from September through November, I'd worked on that pile, creating a neat stack that ran 12 feet long, 4 feet high, and 4 feet deep along the side of my garage. It represented hours of back-breaking labor and about $800 worth of wood I'd purchased from a local supplier. When the power went out, I'd immediately started using my fireplace. It was the only heat source I had. My house was a modest 3-bedroom ranch-style home that I'd bought specifically because it had a real wood-burning fireplace, not one of those fake gas ones. Growing up in northern Idaho, my father had taught me that you always have a backup heat source. That lesson was saving my life right now. I'd been standing at my kitchen window, drinking lukewarm coffee from my French press, when I noticed movement outside. The snow was coming down so thick it was hard to see more than 50 feet, but there was definitely a vehicle in my driveway. As I watched, Karren McKenzie climbed out of the driver's seat, wrapped in a white parka that made her nearly invisible against the snow. She trudged through the knee-deep powder to my woodpile, grabbed an armload of my logs, and carried them back to her SUV. My first instinct was to think I was seeing things wrong. Maybe she was delivering wood. But no, she made another trip, and another, loading my carefully stacked firewood into the back of her Lexus. I set down my coffee mug and grabbed my winter coat from the hook by the door. The cold hit me like a physical blow when I stepped outside. The wind was howling, driving snow into my face despite the hood I'd pulled up. I had to squint to see as I made my way around the side of the house. "Karren, what the hell are you doing?" She turned, her face red from cold and exertion. She had the audacity to look annoyed that I'd interrupted her. "Oh, Keith, I'm requisitioning this firewood for emergency HOA use." "Requisitioning? That's my wood. I split most of that myself." According to Pine Ridge HOA Covenant Section 12.4, all resources during a declared neighborhood emergency can be redistributed by the HOA board for the common good. She grabbed another armload of logs. "My house lost power this morning and I need heat." "So did mine." "That's why I have this wood." "Yes, well, as HOA president, I have certain responsibilities. I need to be able to operate our emergency command center, which is located in my home. Therefore, I have priority access to resources." She brushed past me toward her vehicle. I followed her, my boots crunching through the snow. "That's insane. You can't just steal my firewood. My phone isn't working, but the moment it is, I'm calling the sheriff." Karren dumped the logs into her cargo area and turned to face me. Her expression was the same condescending look I'd seen at every HOA meeting I'd been forced to attend. It's not stealing when it's sanctioned by HOA authority. I suggest you go back inside before you get frostbite. I'll be filing a formal complaint about your hostile attitude. She made 6 more trips while I stood there, too shocked to physically stop her. I'm not a violent person, and despite my anger, I wasn't about to get into a physical altercation with a middle-aged woman during a blizzard. But I watched as she loaded probably a third of my woodpile, at least half a cord, into her Lexus. This is theft, Karren. Legal theft is still theft. File a complaint with the HOA board, she called back. Oh wait, I am the board. See you at the next meeting, Keith. She climbed into her Lexus and carefully backed out of my driveway, her expensive SUV handling the snow like it was built for it. I stood there in the freezing cold, watching my Firewood disappear down Pine Ridge Boulevard. Back inside, I tried my cell phone again. Still no service. The landline I'd reluctantly installed after moving here was also dead. The entire neighborhood's infrastructure was down. I walked to my fireplace, where a healthy fire was burning, and added one of my remaining logs. At the rate I was going through them, and with the temperature forecast to stay below 0 for at least 3 more days, I'd calculated I needed every single piece of that wood to keep from freezing. My closest neighbor was Bill Henderson, a retired Forest Service worker who lived 3 houses down. I decided to walk over there and see if his phone was working, or at least to have a witness to what had just happened. The trek through the snow was exhausting. What was normally a 2-minute walk took nearly 15 minutes. The wind kept trying to push me off the sidewalk into the deeper snow on the lawns. Bill answered his door wearing 3 layers of sweaters and a winter hat. Keith, get in here before you freeze solid. His house was cold, maybe 55 degrees. He had a small fire going in his fireplace as well. Power's out, he said unnecessarily. Been out since this morning. Same here. Bill, I need to tell you what just happened. I explained the situation while he made us both tea on his camping stove. His eyes got wider as I talked. She just took your wood. Just like that, claimed some HOA emergency powers clause. Section 12.4 of the covenant. Bill shook his head. I've lived in Pine Ridge for 12 years, Keith. That woman has been making people miserable for 8 of them. She became HOA president and turned into a complete dictator. Last year, she fined the Petersons $300 because their Christmas lights were the wrong shade of white, said they violated the approved color palette. I've heard the stories. She sent me a violation notice last month because my garbage cans were visible from the street for more than 12 hours. They were out for maybe 14 hours because I forgot to bring them in. That sounds like her. Bill sipped his tea. But this is different. This is actually stealing your property. That's got to be illegal, HOA covenant or not. My phone's dead. Is yours working? He checked. No service. Lines must be down all over. We sat in his cold living room for another 20 minutes discussing what to do. Bill suggested that once the phones were back up, I should call the Flathead County Sheriff's Office immediately. Don't mess around with HOA internal complaints, he advised. She stole your property. That's a crime. Let the sheriff sort it out. The walk back to my house was even worse. The wind had picked up, and visibility was down to maybe 20 feet. I nearly missed my own driveway. Once inside, I shed my snow-covered outer layers and went straight to the fireplace. I was going to have to be very careful with my remaining wood. That night was one of the longest of my life. The house temperature dropped to 48 degrees despite the fire. I wore every piece of warm clothing I owned and huddled under 3 blankets on my couch, feeding the fire just enough to keep it going. Outside, the wind howled like something alive, and snow continued to pile up. Through my front window, I could see it drifting against the house, climbing halfway up the glass. By Thursday morning, the snow had finally stopped. The sun came out, reflecting off the white landscape with blinding intensity. But the temperature had dropped even further, bottoming out at -18 degrees. My phone still had no service. The power was still out. And my woodpile, which should have lasted me through this emergency, was a third gone. I was trying to decide whether to risk walking to the main road to see if I could flag down help when I heard an engine. Looking out, I saw a huge orange snowplow working its way down Pine Ridge Boulevard, followed by a Flathead County Sheriff's truck with chains on its tires. I pulled on my gear and rushed outside, waving both arms. The sheriff's truck stopped and a deputy rolled down his window. He was maybe 35 with a thick beard and sharp blue eyes. "Everyone okay in this house?" he called. "I'm fine, but I need to report a theft." His eyebrows went up. During the blizzard, because of the blizzard, my HOA president stole about half a cord of my firewood yesterday while the phones were down. She claimed some kind of emergency HOA authority, but that's my property and my only heat source. The deputy's expression shifted from surprise to concern. "How much firewood we talking about?" "About a third of my total supply. Maybe half a cord. I measured it this morning best I could. It's lodgepole pine and Douglas fir seasoned. Cost me $800 plus I split a lot of it myself." "And you saw this person take it?" "Watched the whole thing. Tried to stop her verbally, but she ignored me. Her name's Karren McKenzie. She's the Pine Ridge HOA president. Lives at 412 Pine Ridge Boulevard, about half a mile that way." I pointed. The deputy grabbed a radio. "I'm going to call this in." "Can you write down exactly what happened? Timeline, what was said, everything you remember?" "Absolutely." He handed me a clipboard with an incident report form. "Fill this out. I'll be right back." I stood there in the negative cold, using the hood of his truck as a writing surface, and documented everything. The time Karren arrived, what she said, the number of trips she made, her exact words about HOA emergency powers and Section 12.4. I was thorough because I was furious. The more I wrote, the angrier I got. This wasn't just annoying HOA overreach. She'd literally stolen my only heat source during a potentially life-threatening emergency. The deputy returned after about 5 minutes. "Okay, Mr. Yardley. I'm Deputy Martinez. I just spoke with my supervisor, and we're taking this seriously. Theft of heating resources during a weather emergency is treated very seriously in Montana. We've had people die in situations like this. If what you're describing is accurate, this woman committed a crime, HOA authority or not. I have a neighbor who can verify the woodpile size. Bill Henderson, 3 houses down. He saw it before the storm." "Good. We'll talk to him. Right now, I need you to come with me to this Karren McKenzie's house. We're going to resolve this immediately." I climbed into the passenger seat of his truck, grateful for the blast of heat from his vents. We drove slowly down the snow-covered street. The snowplow had only made one pass, leaving a narrow lane. On both sides, the snow was piled 3 and 4 feet high. "You from Montana originally?" Martinez asked. "Idaho. Moved here from Seattle about 18 months ago." "What brought you to Whitefish?" "Needed a change. Got divorced, wanted somewhere quieter." He chuckled without humor. "Bet you weren't expecting HOA drama." "I thought HOAs were more of a suburban nightmare thing. Didn't realize they'd followed me to rural Montana." "Pine Ridge is technically still part of Whitefish city limits," Martinez explained. "It's one of the newer developments, built about 15 years ago." Most of the older Montana folks won't touch HOA properties, but they keep building them for the transplants from California and Washington. No offense. None taken. If I'd known what I was getting into, I might have looked elsewhere. We pulled up to Karren's house, a large 2-story colonial that was easily twice the size of mine. Smoke was pouring from her chimney. Martinez parked and grabbed his radio again. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7. I'm at 412 Pine Ridge Boulevard for the reported theft. Going to make contact now. Copy that, 7. Be advised Sheriff Thompson is en route to your location. Ida 10 minutes. Martinez looked at me. "Sheriff's coming himself. This must have gotten his attention. Come on." We walked up to Karren's front door. The walkway had been meticulously cleared, not a snowflake out of place. Even in an emergency, Karren maintained her standards. Martinez knocked firmly. "Flathead County Sheriff's Office. Open up, please." There was a pause, then the door opened. Karren stood there in yoga pants and a cashmere sweater, looking warm and comfortable. Her expression went from surprise to annoyance when she saw me. "Deputy, how can I help you? If this is about Keith's harassment yesterday, I'm planning to file a formal complaint." "Madam, I'm here about a theft report. Mr. Yardley states that you removed approximately half a cord of firewood from his property yesterday without permission. Is that accurate?" Karren's face flushed. "I did not steal anything. I requisitioned HOA resources under emergency protocols outlined in our covenant. As president, I have that authority." "Madam, can you show me where this firewood is now?" "It's in my living room. I needed it for heat. My power was out. Mr. Yardley's power is also out. He needs that wood for heat as well. I understand that, but I have responsibilities to the community. I need to be able to communicate with residents, coordinate emergency responses, and manage our neighborhood during this crisis." Martinez's expression hardened. "Madam, did you ask Mr. Yardley's permission before taking his firewood?" "I informed him of the requisition." "That's not the same thing. Did he give you permission?" Karren crossed her arms. "He was hostile and uncooperative." "But permission isn't required under Section 12.4 of our covenant." "Madam, I'm going to need to see that covenant language, but I can tell you right now, no HOA agreement supersedes Montana state law regarding theft. If you took someone's property without permission during a declared emergency, that's a serious crime." "Crime? This is ridiculous. It's an internal HOA matter." "No, madam, it's theft. I'm going to need you to show me the firewood in question." Karren's confidence wavered. "I want to speak to your supervisor. He's on his way. Should be here any minute. In the meantime, can you show me the wood?" Before Karren could respond, I heard another vehicle approaching. A larger sheriff's truck pulled up, and an older man in his late 50s stepped out. He had iron-gray hair and the weathered face of someone who'd spent his life dealing with Montana winters and Montana people. "Sheriff Thompson," Martinez said respectfully. The sheriff nodded, then looked at Karren and me. "Someone want to explain what's going on here?" Martinez gave him a quick rundown while Karren stood in her doorway, looking increasingly uncomfortable. The sheriff listened without interrupting, his face impassive. When Martinez finished, Sheriff Thompson turned to Karren. "Mrs. McKenzie, I'm Sheriff Thompson. I understand you removed firewood from Mr. Yardley's property yesterday. Is that correct?" "I requisitioned it under HOA authority." "I didn't ask about authority. Did you take wood from his property and bring it to yours?" "Yes, but it was completely legal according to our homeowner association covenant. How much wood? I don't know exactly. Several armloads." Sheriff Thompson looked at me. "Mr. Yardley, can you estimate how much was taken?" "About half a cord, sir, maybe a little less." My woodpile was carefully stacked and measured. It's pretty obvious how much is missing." The sheriff nodded slowly. "Mrs. McKenzie, let me explain something. I've been sheriff of this county for 16 years. I've dealt with a lot of HOA disputes. Most of them are petty nonsense about fence heights and paint colors. This is different. We're in a state of emergency. The governor declared it yesterday. During a declared emergency, stealing someone's heating source is considered criminal theft with enhancements for endangering life. It doesn't matter what your HOA paperwork says. If you took that man's firewood without his clear permission, you committed a crime." Karren's face went pale. "I was trying to help the community. By stealing someone's heat, how's that help anyone? I needed to coordinate emergency responses. From what I hear, you needed to keep yourself warm, just like everyone else." Sheriff Thompson's voice wasn't harsh, but it was firm. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to return every single log you took from Mr. Yardley's property. Right now. Deputy Martinez and I are going to watch you load it back into your vehicle, drive it back to his house, and unload it exactly where you found it. After that, we're going to have a conversation about whether I'm filing charges. You can't be serious." "Dead serious, madam." "Would you like me to arrest you right now instead? Because that's the alternative. You've admitted to taking his property. I have probable cause." Karren's composure finally cracked. "This is insane. I was following the rules." "No, madam, you were making up rules to justify taking what you wanted." "Now, do we do this the easy way or the hard way?" Karren looked between the three of us, clearly realizing she had no way out. "Fine. I'll return the wood, all of it," the sheriff emphasized. "Every single log." We followed Karren through her house to her living room. It was beautifully decorated in what my ex-wife would have called modern farmhouse style. But what caught my attention was the massive pile of firewood stacked next to her stone fireplace. My firewood. I could even see the distinctive red mark I'd painted on the ends of some logs to keep track of different batches. "That's my wood," I said, pointing. "I marked those ends there with red paint." Sheriff Thompson examined the logs. "Mrs. McKenzie, you're going to need some boxes or bags to transport this. Start gathering them, all of it. But I need heat too. Should have thought of that before you stole someone else's. You've got your own resources, don't you? I have some wood in the garage, but not much. Then I suggest you ration it carefully. Mr. Yardley here has been rationing his because you stole a third of his supply. Get me those containers." What followed was nearly an hour of Karren making trip after trip from her living room to her Lexus, loading my firewood into plastic storage bins and reusable shopping bags. Martinez and I watched from her driveway while Sheriff Thompson supervised inside. The temperature was still in the negative range, and I could see Karren's anger radiating off her with every armload. When her SUV was finally loaded, we all climbed into our respective vehicles and made a small convoy back to my house. Karren parked in my driveway and then began the process of unloading everything and restacking it where she'd found it. "Right there against the garage," I directed. "Stack it the same way it was before." Karren's hands were shaking from cold and anger as she worked. It took another 45 minutes to get everything unloaded and restacked. Sheriff Thompson examined the pile when she finished. "Mr. Yardley, this look right to you?" I looked it over carefully. "It's close. I think she still has maybe 3 or 4 logs, but I can't be completely sure." "Mrs. McKenzie, I used some last night. I needed heat. How many did you burn?" "I don't know. Maybe 5 or 6 logs." Sheriff Thompson pulled out a notepad. 5 or 6 logs of seasoned pine, market value about $8 to $10 each. So that's $40 to $60 worth, plus the labor Mr. Yardley put into splitting and stacking, plus the emotional distress and potential danger you put him in. Let's call it an even $200 in damages. You're going to write Mr. Yardley a check for that amount right now. I don't have my checkbook. Then we'll drive back to your house and get it, or I can arrest you for theft, take you to the county jail, and you can post bail. Your choice. Karren was on the verge of tears now, her carefully maintained composure completely shattered. This is harassment. No, madam. This is law enforcement. Check, please. We made another trip back to her house. She went inside and returned a few minutes later with a check for $200, which she thrust at me without making eye contact. Her hand was trembling as she handed it over. Sheriff Thompson examined the check. Good. Now, Mrs. McKenzie, we need to talk about charges. Charges, but I returned everything. After you were caught and forced to, that doesn't erase the crime. He paused, seeming to consider. Here's the situation. You've admitted to taking property that didn't belong to you. During a state of emergency, that's a serious offense. I could charge you with theft in the 3rd degree, which is a misdemeanor in Montana, plus additional charges related to the emergency declaration. You'd be looking at potential jail time and significant fines. Karren's face went white. I was just following HOA rules. No, you were abusing your position, but I'm going to give you one chance. Mr. Yardley, you're the victim here. Do you want to press charges? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to see Karren face consequences for what she'd done. But another part of me just wanted this over with. I was cold, tired, and I still had to worry about getting through the rest of this blizzard. If I don't press charges, will there be any record of this? I asked. I'm writing up a full incident report regardless, Sheriff Thompson said. It'll be in our system. If Mrs. McKenzie here ever pulls something like this again, we'll have documentation of prior behavior. And I'm going to be having a conversation with the county attorney about these HOA emergency powers she's claiming. I want that on record then, and I want assurance that she can't retaliate against me through the HOA. Mrs. McKenzie, you hear that? If Mr. Yardley receives any suspicious fines, violations, or other harassment from your HOA, I'll be looking at this incident again. And next time, I won't be asking if he wants to press charges. I'll file them myself. Are we clear? Karren nodded miserably. Yes. Say it out loud. Yes, we're clear. I won't retaliate. Good. Now, Mr. Yardley has shown you considerable mercy today. I suggest you think long and hard about how you use your HOA authority going forward. Montana law supersedes any private covenant, and if you endanger someone's safety again, you will face charges. Do you understand? I understand. Deputy Martinez, make sure Mrs. McKenzie gets home safely. Mr. Yardley, let's talk inside for a minute. I led Sheriff Thompson into my cold house. He looked around at my minimal setup, the dying fire in the fireplace, the blankets piled on the couch. You doing okay here? Got enough supplies? I do now that my wood's back. I've got food, water, a camping stove. I'll be fine. Power company says it could be another day or two before electricity's restored to this area. Lines are down all over the county. I'll manage. I've been through worse in Idaho. He nodded approvingly. You handled this right. Could have gotten physical with her, but you kept your head and reported it properly. That's what made this easy to resolve. Will you really charge her if she does something like this again? Absolutely. And between you and me, I'm going to have a conversation with the Pine Ridge HOA board members. All of them. I want to make sure they understand the limits of their authority. We've had problems with this particular HOA before, but nothing this serious. Karren mentioned Section 12.4 of the Covenant. Do those emergency powers actually exist? Probably, in some form. A lot of these HOAs write themselves broad emergency authorities, but they can't supersede state law. They can't authorize theft, trespassing, assault, or anything else illegal. At best, they might be able to coordinate voluntary resource sharing or establish neighborhood watch programs. But requisitioning private property, that's not legal no matter what their paperwork says. Good to know. Sheriff Thompson handed me his card. Power comes back on, phones start working, you have any more problems with her or the HOA, you call me directly. My cell number's on there. I don't care if it's 2 in the morning. Thank you, Sheriff. I really appreciate this. Just doing my job. You stay warm now. After he left, I set about rebuilding my fire with my returned firewood. The house was down to 45 degrees inside. I added log after log, getting a good blaze going, and slowly the temperature started to climb. I sat there on my couch, wrapped in blankets, watching the flames and thinking about what had happened. Karren McKenzie had been so certain of her authority, so convinced that her HOA position gave her the right to take what she wanted. And if the phones had stayed down longer, if the sheriff hadn't come through when he did, she would have gotten away with it. I'd have frozen while she stayed warm with my wood, and there would have been no accountability. The rest of Thursday passed slowly. The power stayed out. I rationed my firewood carefully, keeping the house at a survivable 55 degrees. I ate canned soup heated on my camping stove and drank melted snow that I boiled for safety. It was miserable, but I'd survived worse. Friday morning brought good news. Around 8 o'clock, the power flickered back to life. My lights came on, my furnace roared to life, and I could hear my refrigerator humming. I immediately plugged in my phone to charge and cranked up the heat. Within an hour, the house was back to a comfortable 70 degrees. My phone service returned around 10 o'clock. I had dozens of missed messages and voicemails. Most were from my parents in Idaho, worried about whether I'd survived the storm. A few were from friends back in Seattle, and one was from a number I didn't recognize, left that morning. Mr. Yardley, this is Patricia Paulson. I'm a member of the Pine Ridge HOA board. I heard about what happened with Karren McKenzie and your firewood. Several of us would like to meet with you to discuss this situation. Please call me back when you get this message. I called the number. A woman answered on the second ring, her voice warm but concerned. Mr. Yardley, thank you for calling back. I'm Patricia. I'm one of 3 board members for the Pine Ridge HOA, along with Karren and another member named Doug Fairfield. Doug and I had no idea about what Karren did until Sheriff Thompson contacted us this morning. We're absolutely horrified. It was definitely not what I expected from an HOA president. Nor should you have. Listen, Doug and I would like to meet with you in person if you're willing. We need to discuss this situation and figure out next steps. We also want to review those emergency powers that Karren claimed to have. Would sometime today work? We agreed to meet at 2 o'clock at a coffee shop on Highway 93 that had just reopened. I spent the next few hours warming up, eating real food and documenting everything that had happened. I wanted my own written record of events, separate from whatever the sheriff had filed. At 2 o'clock, I pulled into the coffee shop parking lot. The roads were still treacherous, with ice hidden under packed snow, but traffic was moving again. Inside, I found Patricia and Doug waiting at a corner table. Patricia was in her 60s, with short gray hair and kind eyes. She was wearing a practical fleece jacket and jeans. Doug was maybe 50, with glasses and a nervous energy about him. They both stood when I approached. "Keith, thank you for coming," Patricia said, shaking my hand. "This is Doug Fairfield." We all sat down with our coffee and they got right to business. "First, Doug and I want to apologize on behalf of the HOA for what Karren did," Patricia began. "What she did was completely unacceptable and in no way represented the board or the community. I appreciate that. Sheriff Thompson made it pretty clear that she was out of line. "That's putting it mildly," Doug said. "Patricia and I spent all morning going through the HOA covenant documents, looking at this section 12.4 that Karren cited. It exists, but it's nothing like what she claimed." "What does it actually say?" Patricia pulled out a folder with printed pages. "It says that during a declared neighborhood emergency, the HOA board may, quote, coordinate voluntary resource sharing and establish communication protocols to ensure resident safety," end quote. There's nothing about requisitioning property. Nothing about taking anyone's belongings without permission. Karren completely fabricated that authority. So she just made it up. Either that, or she somehow convinced herself that coordination powers meant confiscation powers, Doug said. Either way, it's inexcusable. She endangered your safety, violated your property rights, and abused her position. What happens now? Patricia and Doug exchanged glances. "That's what we wanted to discuss with you. Doug and I have been board members for 5 years. We've watched Karren become increasingly controlling and authoritarian. The Firewood incident is the worst thing she's done, but it's not the first time she's overstepped. We think it's time for her to resign as president. You have the authority to make that happen," the board does. "It requires a 2/3 vote. With Doug and me voting for removal and Karren obviously voting against, that's 2 out of 3, she's out. Won't she fight it? Probably. But we don't care. And frankly, after Sheriff Thompson's visit, she doesn't have a leg to stand on. She knows she committed theft. If she fights us, we'll publicize what she did, and the entire community will turn against her. She's done." I sipped my coffee, thinking about this. "What do you need from me?" "Your permission to use the incident in our justification for her removal. The sheriff's report will be part of it, but we'd like to include your account as well. We want to make sure there's a complete record of what happened and why we're taking this action. You have my permission. I'll write up everything I remember and send it to you. Thank you." Patricia looked relieved. "We're meeting with Karren tomorrow morning to inform her of the board's decision. We expect she'll resign immediately rather than face a formal removal process. If not, we'll proceed with removal anyway." "And then what? Who becomes president?" "Doug and I will co-chair until we can hold elections for a new board member and president. We're also going to propose significant changes to the HOA covenant. These emergency powers sections need to be clarified, and we want to add explicit language preventing board members from unilaterally taking actions that affect residents' property or safety." We talked for another hour, going over details and discussing the future of the Pine Ridge HOA. Both Patricia and Doug seemed genuinely committed to running a reasonable homeowner association, one that maintained property values and community standards without becoming tyrannical. It was refreshing after 18 months of dealing with Karren's increasingly ridiculous demands. Saturday morning, I got a phone call from Patricia. "It's done. We met with Karren an hour ago. She's resigned as president and from the board effective immediately." "How did she take it?" "About as well as you'd expect. Lots of anger, some tears, accusations that we were betraying her. But she signed the resignation letter. She knows she doesn't have any other option." "Is she going to stay in the neighborhood?" "Don't know. That's her choice. But she won't have any authority anymore." Over the next week, the neighborhood slowly returned to normal. Power was fully restored. The roads were cleared. The temperature climbed back above freezing. Life resumed its usual patterns. But something had changed in Pine Ridge. Word had spread about what Karren had done, despite her obvious wishes that it remain quiet. The story circulated through the community like wildfire. I heard about it from Bill Henderson first. He stopped by my house 3 days after Karren's resignation, bringing a 6-pack of local beer. "Everyone's talking about what happened," he said as we sat in my living room. "Half the neighborhood is calling you a hero for standing up to her. The other half is just glad someone finally did. I'm not a hero, I just reported a theft." "Yeah, but you took on the HOA dragon and won. That takes guts. Most people just roll over and take it when Karren comes at them. Speaking of which, have you seen her around?" "Nope. Word is she's barely left her house. Embarrassed, I guess. Good riddance, if you ask me." Over the following weeks, Patricia and Doug worked on restructuring the HOA. They held community meetings, something Karren had rarely done, and solicited input from residents about what they wanted from their homeowner association. The response was overwhelming. People wanted basic maintenance of common areas, reasonable architectural standards, and otherwise to be left alone. I attended one of these meetings in early February. It was held at the community clubhouse, a small building near the neighborhood entrance. About 40 people showed up, nearly half the homes in Pine Ridge. Patricia stood at the front of the room with Doug beside her. "Thank you all for coming. As most of you know, there have been significant changes in the HOA leadership recently. Doug and I want to take this opportunity to discuss the future of Pine Ridge and how we can build a better community together." She outlined proposed changes to the covenant. Streamlining rules, eliminating petty restrictions, clarifying enforcement procedures, and most importantly, completely rewriting the emergency powers section to prevent any future abuse. "We're also proposing a new position," Doug added. "An ombudsman elected by the residents who has the authority to review and potentially veto board decisions. This creates a check on board power and ensures residents have a voice." The response was enthusiastically positive. People asked questions, made suggestions, and for the first time in my 18 months in Pine Ridge, I felt like I was part of an actual community rather than subjects of a tiny dictatorship. After the meeting, several neighbors came up to talk to me. Some thanked me for standing up to Karren. Others shared their own horror stories about HOA overreach and fines. One couple, the Johnsons, told me they'd been planning to sell their house and leave Pine Ridge specifically because of Karren. "You saved this neighborhood," Mrs. Johnson said. "I know that sounds dramatic, but it's true." She was destroying any sense of community we had. I didn't think of myself as a hero or savior. I'd just been cold and angry and unwilling to let someone steal my property. But I couldn't deny that something good had come from it. March brought warmer weather and the official HOA elections. 3 new board positions were open: president, secretary, and the new ombudsman role. Patricia was elected president unanimously. Doug remained on the board as secretary. A woman named Linda Kowalski, a retired attorney, was elected ombudsman. The changes to the covenant were ratified by a vote of the membership. Karren McKenzie didn't attend the elections. In fact, I hadn't seen her since the day she'd returned my firewood. Her house was still occupied. I could see lights on in the evenings. But she'd become a ghost in the neighborhood, invisible and silent. One afternoon in late March, I was outside doing yard work when a car pulled into Karren's driveway. A real estate agent got out and began taking photos of the house. I wasn't surprised. Within a week, there was a for sale sign in her yard. The house sold quickly. By mid-April, I watched as a moving truck backed into her driveway and workers began loading her belongings. I was in my front yard, pruning some bushes, when Karren emerged from her house. She looked older than I remembered, tired and defeated. She glanced in my direction, and for a moment our eyes met. I wondered if she'd say something, offer an apology or a final curse, but she just looked away and climbed into her Lexus. I watched as she drove away from Pine Ridge for the last time. There was no satisfaction in her leaving, just a quiet relief that a difficult chapter was closed. The new HOA board proved to be everything Patricia and Doug had promised. Reasonable, transparent, and focused on actual community needs rather than petty power games. The monthly newsletter actually contained useful information. Board meetings were open and well attended. Enforcement of rules was fair and proportional. My life in Whitefish returned to the peace and quiet I'd been seeking. I spent my weekends hiking in the surrounding mountains, fishing in nearby lakes, and working on my house. I made friends with neighbors beyond just Bill Henderson. The community slowly healed from years of Karren's management. By the time summer arrived, Pine Ridge felt like a completely different place. We had neighborhood barbecues and a 4th of July party that drew nearly every resident. Kids played in the streets again, no longer afraid of violating some obscure covenant rule. People painted their houses colors they actually liked. The neighborhood still looked nice, but it felt lived in and loved rather than sterile and controlled. One evening in July, I was sitting on my front porch with Bill, drinking beer and watching the sunset when he said, "You know, Keith, I've been thinking about that whole Firewood thing." Yeah. If Karren hadn't done what she did, if she hadn't finally gone too far, we'd probably still be suffering under her rules. Sometimes it takes something dramatic to shake things up and make change possible. I suppose that's true. Though I would have preferred not to nearly freeze to death in the process. Fair enough. But look at what you've got now. A functioning HOA, good neighbors, and a story that'll be told at parties for years. He wasn't wrong. Over the months that followed, I heard various versions of the story circulating through Whitefish. Each telling was a little different, a little more embellished, but the core remained the same. The HOA president who stole firewood during a blizzard and got caught by the sheriff. Sheriff Thompson kept his word about monitoring the situation. He stopped by my house a couple of times over the spring just to check in, make sure I wasn't having any problems with HOA retaliation. Each time, I assured him everything was fine. "Glad to hear it," he said during his last visit in May. "We sent the incident report to the county attorney like I said we would. They've issued guidance to all the HOAs in the county about the limits of their emergency powers. Your situation became a teaching moment." "Happy to contribute to law enforcement education," I said with a smile. "You did good, Keith. A lot of people would have just let it go, avoided the confrontation. But you stood up for yourself and you did it the right way. That matters." As summer turned to fall, I began preparing for winter again. I ordered 2 full cords of wood this time, stacking them carefully along the side of my garage. Bill helped me with the stacking, and we made a weekend project out of it, fueled by pizza and beer. "Think you've got enough this time?" He joked. "I'm not taking any chances. Plus, if we have another blizzard and someone needs wood, I'll have some to share. The right way by choice." The new family that bought Karren's house turned out to be wonderful neighbors. The Reeds had 2 young kids and a friendly golden retriever. They were transplants from Denver, looking for a slower pace of life. I helped them get settled in, filled them in on the neighborhood dynamics, and gave them a carefully edited version of what had happened with the previous owner. "So that's why everyone warned us about HOA drama before we moved in," Mrs. Reed said. "But it sounds like it's all resolved now, completely. Patricia and Doug run things now and they're reasonable people. You'll be fine." As winter approached again, this time I was prepared. My woodpile was secure. My house was weatherproofed, and I had backup heating sources in place. When the first snow fell in late October, I stood at my window with a cup of coffee, watching the flakes drift down, and felt nothing but contentment. The Pine Ridge HOA held its annual meeting in November. Patricia presented a report on the year's activities and finances. Everything was transparent, well documented, and reasonable. When she finished, she said something I never thought I'd hear at an HOA meeting. "I want to thank everyone for your patience and participation this year. We've rebuilt this association from the ground up, and it's working because of all of you. This is what a homeowner association should be. Neighbors helping neighbors, maintaining our community together, not a power structure imposing arbitrary rules. We're not perfect, and we'll make mistakes, but we'll always listen and try to do what's right." The room erupted in applause. People were actually applauding their HOA board. It was surreal and wonderful. After the meeting, Patricia pulled me aside. "Keith, I never properly thanked you for what you did last January. Standing up to Karren changed everything. If you hadn't fought back, reported it to the sheriff, and followed through, we'd still be dealing with her reign of terror. I was just trying to stay warm. You were doing what was right. That's what matters. This community owes you a debt. The community doesn't owe me anything." "This is how it should have been all along," she smiled. "True enough. Still, thank you." As I drove home that night, I thought about everything that had happened over the past year. I'd moved to Montana looking for peace and simplicity. Instead, I'd found HOA drama, a blizzard, theft, and a confrontation with an abusive president. But through all of it, I'd also found community, friends, and the satisfaction of standing up for what was right. The Firewood incident, as it came to be known, became part of Pine Ridge lore. New residents heard the story, usually from multiple sources, each adding their own perspective. It served as a reminder of what can happen when power goes unchecked, but also as proof that standing up to abuse can create positive change. Sheriff Thompson retired in early 2026, and at his retirement party, he told the story of the Firewood theft to a room full of law enforcement officers and community members. "It wasn't the biggest case I ever worked," he said. "No violence, no significant dollar amount, nobody died. But it mattered. It showed that the law applies to everyone, even HOA presidents. And it reminded me why I got into this job in the first place, to protect people and ensure justice, no matter how small the situation might seem." I attended that retirement party, and afterward, Sheriff Thompson pulled me aside one last time. "Keith, I'm glad I could help you last year. But more than that, I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to do my job right. Too often in small disputes, people don't report things because they think nothing will be done. You trusted the system and it worked. That's how it's supposed to be. Thank you for taking it seriously, Sheriff. A lot of people wouldn't have. Then they're bad at their job. Stay warm this winter." As I write this now, it's been nearly 2 years since Karren McKenzie stole my firewood during that blizzard. Life in Whitefish has been everything I hoped for when I moved here. The HOA functions smoothly under Patricia's leadership. My neighbors are friends. The community is strong. I still have that check Karren wrote me for $200. I never cashed it. Instead, I framed it and hung it in my garage near the woodpile. It's a reminder of what happened, but more importantly, a reminder that standing up for yourself matters. That rules and authority have limits. That justice is possible if you're willing to pursue it. Every fall, I stack my firewood carefully along the side of my garage. Every winter, I keep my fireplace ready. And every time I add a log to the fire, I remember that cold January day when Karren McKenzie thought her HOA authority put her above the law, and learned otherwise. The Pine Ridge HOA is now held up as a model by the county. Other neighborhoods send representatives to our meetings to learn how we restructured and improved our association. Patricia has been invited to speak at several conferences about HOA reform. What started as a theft during a blizzard became a catalyst for positive change that rippled far beyond one small neighborhood in Montana. As for me, I'm just Keith Yardley, a guy who moved to Montana looking for a quiet life. I got more drama than I bargained for, but in the end, it worked out. My woodpile is secure, my house is warm, my community is strong, and every single log that was taken has been returned exactly as the sheriff promised. That's really all I ever wanted. Justice, fairness, and enough firewood to make it through a Montana winter. I got all three, and I learned that sometimes standing up to abuse, even from something as seemingly trivial as an HOA, can change everything. Not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. The snow is falling outside my window again as I finish writing this. Another Montana winter is here. But this time, I'm ready. I have plenty of wood, all of it legally acquired and properly stacked. My neighbors are friends who would help me if I needed it, and whom I would help in return. The HOA exists to serve the community, not control it. And somewhere out there, in whatever neighborhood she moved to, I hope Karren McKenzie learned something from what happened. I hope she understands that authority without accountability is tyranny, and that even in a homeowner association, the law matters. Most of all, I hope she never steals anyone's firewood again, because next time the sheriff might not be so lenient, and next time she might not get the chance to return every single log.